vielleicht nur als imposant.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Our cover story tonight focuses on a big question, the answer to which will determine a lot of things. To begin with, it will tell us if a disinformation campaign actually helped the president of the Maldives, Mohamed Muizzu, come to power. We ask if a fake letter aimed at whipping anti-India sentiments actually helped him get the top job. We join the dots for you and get you the bigger picture. Also on the show for you tonight, startling confessions made in a documentary telling you about the extent of corruption in China. The rot runs deep. We tell you all about it. The drone manufactured by Russian arms company Kalashnikov concern is making headlines. We tell you why. We also tell you all about the upgrade to the drone features. How strong is your passport? What makes a passport strong? Which are the world's strongest and weakest passports? The latest list is out. We get to the key takeaways. Major infestation by mice in the British Parliament has been dominating the discourse. We tell you all about it. And we are starting off tonight with a big question. Did Muizzu use lies to win his election and seize power? Did a fake letter aimed at whipping anti-India sentiments help Muizzu secure the top job in the Maldives? A new report blows the lid off his party's attempts to spread biased, manipulated narrative against India in the run-up to the elections. Let me break it all down for you. The revelation comes from the European Election Observation Mission's report. It was published yesterday and it is incriminating. It categorically talks about multiple disinformation attempts made online by the ruling coalition of the Maldives. I'm talking about the President Muizzu-led PPM-PNC coalition that is now in power in the Maldives. The EU-EOM report states, and I'm quoting, their campaign included anti-Indian sentiments based on fears of Indian influences and anxiety regarding a presence of Indian military personnel inside the country. This theme was subject to multiple online disinformation attempts. The Maldives presidential elections took place on September 9 and 30th, and this report was prepared following an 11-week-long observation. It says that the coalition that is now in power tried to spread falsehood around anti-India themes throughout the election cycle. We knew about the manipulation of facts that took place during the Maldivian elections, but this EU report is the final nail in the coffin. Remember last year, a fake letter attributed to India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar was circulated on Maldivian social media, and this fake letter claimed that New Delhi had requested 2 15-hectare plots in the Maldives with full sovereignty. The letter claimed that in return, India would be willing to waive Maldivian debt. However, the Indian government promptly issued a statement calling this letter fake. The High Commission of India in the Maldives had said unequivocally rejects and condemns this malicious attempt to malign and disturb India-Maldives relations. But this is one of the many examples as far as this disinformation campaign initiated by PPM-PNC against India is concerned. And the thing is, it worked big time for Muizzu. He managed to win the elections, and now the India-Maldives relationship is witnessing a rapid decline. Muizzu, who has a pro-China stance, took office in November last year. He won on his India Out campaign, under which he projected New Delhi's huge influence as a threat to the Maldives' sovereignty. Since coming to power, in fact, his government has asked dozens of locally based Indian military personnel to leave. Meanwhile, Muizzu's government is talking up opportunities for Chinese investors, and this is despite the Maldives being heavily indebted to Beijing. Now, China and Maldives under Muizzu have upgraded their relationship after casting India as a threat to sovereignty. The Maldivian president has signed several new agreements with China, its largest creditor. On Wednesday, the deals were signed. They range from climate to infrastructure. No details about the value of the deals have been shared by either side, but it set the stage for further Chinese investment in the Indian Ocean archipelago. During the talks, in fact, Chinese President Xi Jinping called Muizzu an old friend. Meanwhile, Muizzu expressed gratitude for China's role in the Maldives' economic success. Try as they may to show that all is well, but the ground reality paints a completely different picture. You see, the World Bank in a report has warned that further cozying up to China could spell trouble for the Maldives. The country owes around $1.37 billion to Beijing. That represents 20% of its public debt. China is the Maldives' biggest bilateral creditor, ahead of Saudi Arabia and India. Maldives owes $124 million to Saudi Arabia and $123 million to India. If anything, the latest diplomatic row between India and the Maldives is just another example of the deep-seated anti-India sentiment that the ruling alliance harbors. Just look at what triggered the flare-up. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Lakshadweep. Some local media users project this Indian archipelago as an alternate tourism destination for Indians in place of the Maldives. But bear in mind, there was no mention or reference to the Maldives or any other island nation in the Indian Prime Minister's posts regarding his visit to Lakshadweep. Yet, the scene of Indian Prime Minister appreciating the beauty of the Indian archipelago appeared to offend the Maldivian politicians. And soon, The conversation gave way to an avalanche of controversy. Maldivian ministers passed derogatory comments against Prime Minister Modi and India. They slammed this discourse of Lakshadweep replacing the Maldives in tourism. And following the uproar, the Maldivian Foreign Ministry went on damage control mode. They said that the comments made by the ministers were personal and did not represent the views of the government. But the damage, you see, was already done. India remains the main source of tourism for the Maldives, by the way. The Indian tourist count has dipped in the Maldives now. According to Indian media, in 2023, over 2 lakh Indians visited the Maldives. But following the controversy, the daily average of the Indian visitors has dropped to around 400 this year. In the first week of January, only 3,000 Indian tourists have visited the Maldives so far, and travel agents are concerned. President Muizzu has fractured Maldives' relationship with India. He even broke the long tradition of Maldivian presidents visiting India as their first official trip after he won the elections. Instead, he has gone to Beijing, where he has waxed lyrical about President Xi Jinping. The proof is in the pudding. The Maldives will do well to work on fixing its house and the way it holds future elections. That is exactly what the EU-EOM recommends for the Maldives. It suggests Mali to take fact-checking initiatives so that it can combat misinformation. The Maldives is leaning on China to help it stay afloat, but China is in no position to support. The dragon is consumed by problems of its own. Corruption currently being its biggest headache. You heard that right. There is complete corruption in China. From sports and healthcare to infrastructure and defense, the country is neck deep in graft, with people taking bribes or being entrapped in spy networks. Let's kickstart with the Chinese Football Association. This is the sporting body's former boss, Chen Shuan. He recently featured in a documentary which was trying to answer a simple question. Why does Chinese football not do well? Chinese President Xi Jinping is reportedly a football fan. His dream is to see China become a global football superpower. China has invested in football leagues, hired world-class players, yet China never made a mark in football. And why is that? The answer, this Chinese documentary says, is corruption. Let's just bring back Chen Shuan. He confessed on record that corruption was puncturing Chinese football. He said, and I'm quoting now, "Corruption is everywhere in each and every aspect." In fact, Chen admitted to accepting $42,000 from officials of 2 clubs before he became the boss of China's Football Federation. Let that sink in. This money came as congratulatory gifts, but Chen knew that his palm was being greased. Also part of this documentary was Li Tai. Some of you may have seen him on television. Li is a former head coach of China's men national team. He was part of the team that represented China in the 2002 World Cup. In fact, Li also played for Everton in EPL, or the English Premier League. In short, Li is a high-profile footballer. And currently, he is being probed for corruption. In this documentary, Li confesses of match fixing and taking bribes. He talks about an incident where he, in the capacity of a manager, had asked a player of a football club to share a 6 million yuan bribe among his key players to fix the match. Sure, match fixing is a global nuisance, but Chinese leader Xi Jinping used to take pride in running a tight, clean ship. In the year 2012, the Chinese Communist Party launched a campaign against corruption. It promised a tiger hunt 11 years on, the failure of Xi Jinping's administration is out for the world to see. Chinese corruption is making global headlines. Graft is stunting Chinese growth, pricking holes in Beijing's growth bubble. Also dampening Xi Jinping's dream of global dominance. The Chinese football team never made it past the preliminary stage of the Qatar World Cup. Corruption punctured China's football. The story spills outside the football stadium as well, by the way. Just tell me one thing. In which other country does the military fill its missiles with water instead of fuel? This is a reality check for Xi Jinping. Under him, Chinese film star Fan Bingbing has disappeared. The serving chief of Interpol, Meng Hongwei, has disappeared. A serving defense minister and a foreign minister have disappeared. Why? For alleged corruption. We have been telling you about the purge in China. Purged officers include military commanders. Many of them are Xi Jinping's hand-picked officials, in fact. And their involvement in corruption throws mud at Xi Jinping. They bring to the fore uncomfortable questions on Xi Jinping's judgment and decision-making abilities, or the lack of. Rumors are rife that Xi's hand-picked foreign minister, Qin Gang, was romantically involved with a TV presenter who also has now vanished. Reports say the two were compromised by Western intelligence. And as if corruption wasn't bad enough, now you also have high-profile espionage haunting China. Every now and then, China's state broadcaster CCTV airs confessions of corruption, of top officials taking bribes. What for exactly? If the high-profile disappearances and confessions were supposed to be a deterrent, the policy has clearly failed. If they were supposed to be an eyewash, then China's lies has been exposed. Today, when countries are trying to invest their resources in safeguarding their economies from the war in the high seas, the Chinese economy is struggling to save itself from a war within. Chinese missiles are not war ready. They are filled with water. The missile silos have defective lids, and chances are they will come in the way of a launch. Complete corruption, like I have been telling you. On Monday, Xi Jinping addressed the plenary session of the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection. He asked them to show no mercy. We must never turn back, slack off, or show mercy in our fight against corruption, quote unquote, is what Xi Jinping said. The plenary concluded on Wednesday, following which the anti-corruption body put out a communique. What did it say? The statement sang praises for Xi Jinping, applauded him for leading, quote-unquote, the entire party to promote comprehensive and strict governance with unprecedented determination. Really? Is this where the problem lies? That between covering up Xi Jinping's failures, glorifying his leadership, and projecting an image of no tolerance, China is being spread too thin to tackle the real problem. Reports say in the last 11 years, the anti-graft body has investigated 4.7 million officials. 45 investigations were launched into senior officials in the year 2023 alone. Yet, there is complete corruption in China. And today, Beijing is being forced to widen the net for the tiger hunt. This year, officials will be paying close attention to corruption in 6 departments. And which are these departments? Finance, money policy, employment, industry, regional programs, technology, and environment. Auditors are also closely monitoring the transactions in the construction sector and healthcare. So what's left? That's literally all of China. All of China knee-deep in complete corruption. Does this look like a superpower to you or a failed state? Russia's new weapons upgrade is sure to give Ukraine a major nightmare. By now, we've all read a lot about Russia's use of suicide drones in battleground Ukraine. And now it's working on a powerful new drone that could launch airstrikes against Ukraine and become a major source of headache for its war-weary and war-worn troops. Reports say that Russia is upgrading its loitering munition. It is the Zala KYB UAV, or as it's most commonly known, the Cube. And Russia's weapons production lines are on overdrive. The drone is manufactured by Russian arms company Kalashnikov Concern. And this is what the upgrade to the drone features. Reports describe the upgrades are as if the Russians have strapped a sledgehammer to the belly of the drone. It comes with a beefed up warhead, making it a more formidable nightmare for the enemy. The warhead is made from the explosive Okfol. It is 1.7 times more powerful than TNT. No wonder then Russia keeps insisting that it has the upper hand in the arms race with the West. And by the looks of it, Moscow intends to keep the rate of arms growth high. Now, it's not clear when the Cube will be used on the battlefield, but reports speculate that Russia may have already started using these upgraded suicide drones in the battlefield. Case in point being its maker, Kalashnikov Concern, the president, Alan Lushnikov. He told Russian state media on Christmas that the first batch of the Cube has been shipped. He said, and I'm quoting, tests have been successfully completed and the first batch is being shipped to the customers right now. I think at this very moment, this is a serious step because in fact, it was a new product. And here's what else we know about the Cube. It was first introduced in the year 2019. It already has some formidable features, including its ability to travel silently for 30 minutes. This even at a top speed of 130 kilometers per hour. So then, why did the Russians feel the need to upgrade it? You see, the original had some limitations. It had a relatively small warhead and it was used less often than other Russian drones in its class, such as the Lancet. In October, in fact, Russia unveiled a new SLA-53 version of the Lancet drones. It included an automatic guidance system that can distinguish types of targets as well as increase the strike success rates. And even this upgraded Lancet drone, despite its guidance system update, lacked a warhead powerful enough to significantly cause damage. Now, the upgraded version of this Russian drone will pack a more powerful punch against targets. The new version of the suicide drone, the Cube, can now fill those gaps. It can hit some of the targets impervious to the Lancet and other drones. And the most well-known suicide drones that are being used by Russians are the Iranian-designed Shahed drones, also known as kamikaze drones. For the unversed, kamikaze drones are also loitering munitions. They have explosives in a warhead on the nose. It is designed to loiter over a target until it is instructed to attack. The Iranian Shahed 136 does that. With a wingspan of about 2.5 meters or 8.2 feet, they can be hard to detect on the radar. Remember, war-battered Ukraine has been inundated by repeated Russian drone attacks since late December. Of course, Ukraine has often been able to destroy these drones by their air defenses with relative ease, and that is creating the need for Russia to keep making more drones or even upgrade them. And in recent months, Russia has been working to change the air attack strategy. Moscow basically wants to make it more difficult for Ukraine to intercept these drones, and to do so, it is making extensive upgrades to its drone fleet. Let's now shift our focus to Nepal. A spiritual leader has been arrested on charges of rape and kidnapping. His name is Ram Bahadur Bomjan, but the world knows him as the Buddha Boy. So who is he and what's his story? How did he go from a spiritual leader to an alleged rapist? Let's start from the top. Now, little is known about the Buddha boy's early years. He was born in 1990 as Ram Bahadur Bomjan Tamang. He lived in the Bara district of Nepal. When he was around 14 years old, he left his home for India. He went to Dehradun to study and become a lama at a monastery, but he did not finish what he started. Only 5 months later, he returned to Bara. It wasn't long when he left his home once again, and this time to do meditation. According to some versions of the story, nobody had a clue. Bomjan just disappeared after midnight. A search was conducted, but he was nowhere to be found. And next morning, his brothers saw him near a river close to their house. But Bomjan refused to go home. He kept on walking alone, only to stop at the Ratanpuri jungle. The next day, he was found meditating under a peepal tree. Dressed in white clothes, he sat cross-legged with a calm expression on his face. Days went by, but Bomjan did not move. Days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months. But Bomjan did not move a finger, let alone eat or drink. Soon the news spread. The pictures of Bomjan meditating were circulated. People started drawing parallels between him and Lord Buddha, the founder of Buddhism. And there were uncanny coincidences. Just like Buddha, Bomjan's mother was also named Maya Devi. Just like Buddha, Bomjan was also born on a full moon day. He also meditated under the peepal tree and assumed the same posture as Lord Buddha. At that time, this was enough to make people believe. Many started worshipping him as the reincarnation of Buddha. And soon, Bomjan became Nepal's Buddha boy. In the year 2005, the 15-year-old sat in a tree hole meditating for 11 months without food, without water. That is what the local media reported. We still don't know how he did that. If at all, some 50 meters away, a barbed wire and guards isolated him from the touch of the world. Only his brother had the key to this fortress. Now, just a year ago, Ratanpuri had been a simple farming village. It had little contact to the outside world. But after the rise of the Buddha boy, the village became a sort of a pilgrimage site. Devotees bought and sold Bomjan's merchandise. There were pictures, videos, books. Even a documentary was made on him. Devotees gave him hundreds of thousands of rupees in offerings. Even well-known ministers and businessmen became his followers. A decade passed by. Bomjan declared his own religion, set up an ashram and built an empire. His religious organization branched out both at home and abroad. But little did he know that his empire would fall like a castle of cards. So how did the Buddha boy's downfall actually begin? Well, he faced allegations of wrongdoing. Reports started to emerge about his violent behavior and alleged crimes. It began with an assault. A devotee came to Bomjan's monastery to visit his guru, and when the Buddha boy reportedly attacked him with a sword, and soon this erratic behavior was common for people in the ashram. In the year 2010, dozens of assault complaints were filed against Bomjan. He was accused of beating the victims because they disturbed his meditation. In the year 2018, an 18-year-old nun accused Bomjan of raping her, that too at his own ashram when she was a minor. The following year, police opened another investigation against the Buddha boy. His own family members reported the disappearance of 4 devotees from one of the ashrams. It's still not known where those people are. This was the Buddha boy's undoing. An arrest was issued against him in the year 2020, and almost 4 years on, the police finally got a hold of the Buddha boy. They tracked down the 34-year-old on the outskirts of capital Kathmandu. He reportedly tried to flee the officers by jumping 2 floors from a window, but all in vain. The police arrested Bomjan and brought him before the media in handcuffs. The officers also seized a stack of Nepalese banknotes and other foreign currencies. How much was it worth? Some $260,000. Bomjan is now expected to be taken to court. His followers are not happy, of course. They gathered outside the Central Investigation Bureau offices in Kathmandu, but were pushed back by the riot police. You see, this was the rise and fall of a so-called spiritual leader. There was a time when he was recognized as a peaceful ascetic, but now his monstrous side is on wide display. And let's now shift our focus back to China. According to reports, China is relying on a new tactic to influence the elections in Taiwan: artificial intelligence. You heard that right. China is apparently using AI to change the course of the Taiwanese elections. You see, on Saturday, the vibrant Asian democracy of Taiwan will be holding presidential and parliamentary elections. And these elections are critical because of Taiwan's location. After all, it lies on the doorstep of authoritarian China. And naturally, the results of these elections will reverberate far beyond its borders. And naturally, China's communist leaders are watching these elections very closely. Why would they not? They have long claimed Taiwan as part of their territory, despite having never controlled it. So here's what they are doing to install a pro-China government in the country. They are using a combination of cyber activities and disinformation campaigns to manipulate public opinion and political outcomes. According to the report, China has created pro-Chinese news anchors using advanced AI. They are being used as part of a state-aligned information campaign. These digital avatars are pretending to be Taiwanese and promoting pro-China stories in Taiwan. Taiwanese voters, unable to discern reality from forgeries, are even falling for it. And that is the first tactic. The second tactic is creating inauthentic accounts that pose as Taiwanese users to spread political memes and videos. And these videos are uploaded across Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. And what exactly do these videos promote? Well, they do the bidding of Taiwan's KMT party. At the same time, they criticize other parties like Tsai Ing-wen's Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP. The content closely tracks Taiwan's news cycle, quickly leveraging domestic news developments such as controversies surrounding egg shortages there or the alleged drugging of toddlers at a kindergarten. They use these events to portray KMT's opponents as incompetent as well as corrupt. Just have a look at this report, for instance. It talks about a fake presidential election poll. The report says that on the 21st of December last year, Taiwanese authorities arrested an online journalist called Lin Hsien Yuan. The individual apparently faked and orchestrated a presidential poll. He fabricated that poll to promote pro-China sentiments. Taiwanese authorities have taken note of these tactics. The foreign minister has issued a statement. He has said, and I'm quoting, China's global objective is that they want to use Taiwan as a test ground, and if they are able to successfully shape the results of the Taiwan elections, they will try to apply their tactics on other countries. The question is why? Why is China doing all of this? Well, China's ultimate goal is to take control of the self-governing island, whose high-tech economy supplies key components for computers, cell phones, and other electronic devices, and ships much of the world's goods out from the Taiwan Strait. But will these tactics actually work? Will Beijing be able to influence the elections? Will it be able to install a party which favors China? We will have to wait and watch. How strong is your passport? What determines the strength of your passport? The latest rankings of the world's strongest and weakest passports are out. Our next report telling you all about them.
Which are the world's strongest passports? This year's list is out, and there are several key takeaways. The Henley Passport Index ranks the world's most travel-friendly passports. Basically, the Henley Passport Index ranks the world's passports according to the number of destinations their holders can access without a prior visa. This is based on data from the International Air Transport Association. For the first time, there are 6 countries on the number 1 spot. Topping the list are 4 EU member states: France, Germany, Italy and Spain, along with Asian powerhouses Japan and Singapore. The passports of these countries enable you to have visa-free access to a whopping 194 destinations. Japan and Singapore have held the top position for the last 5 years. At the second spot, South Korea joins Finland and Sweden, with their passports providing visa-free travel to 193 destinations. What about India? Where does it stand on the list? It is at the 80th spot, with visa-free access to 62 destinations. This includes tourist hubs like Sri Lanka, Thailand and Mauritius. Embarrassingly enough for Pakistan, it has the world's 4th least powerful passport. Only Iraq, Syria and Afghanistan are ranked below it, with Afghanistan having the weakest passport. What about the other takeaways? The index analyzes travel freedoms, and the moral of the story is there is an increasing global mobility gap. If you compare the number of destinations that holder of the strongest and weakest passports can travel to, that's a figure of 194 versus 28. The Henley Global Mobility Report 2024 basically stresses on the importance of more travel freedom. Also, openness to international collaboration, which are important for economic development.
It is the 11th of January and 2024 is already turning out to be a bad year for working professionals. Scores of corporate sector employees are being laid off, especially in big tech companies, the likes of Amazon, Google and Meta. Let's start off with Google. It has announced that it will be laying off hundreds of employees from 3 of its teams: digital assistant, hardware and engineering. This move is part of the company's ongoing efforts to reduce expenses. And what's worse, it comes almost exactly 1 year after Google had announced its biggest layoffs ever, which impacted 12,000 employees. The layoffs will impact employees involved in the development of Google Assistant and those in the augmented reality hardware team. And besides this, the company's central engineering organization will also see job cuts. And next we have Amazon. It has announced plans to lay off several hundred employees from its Prime Video and Amazon MGM Studios divisions. The company's senior vice president addressed the decision in a note to the employees. In fact, she said the move was needed as the company aims to shift its focus and resources towards content and product initiatives with greater impact. The note, as per Reuters, indicates that the layoffs would primarily affect employees in the United States. And next we have Meta. According to reports, the new year was not all that happy for scores of Meta employees. Some of them working at Meta-owned Instagram have been laid off. At least 60 technical program managers were told that their roles were disappearing. And these were people who go in between Meta's tech workers, like its engineers and the higher level product managers. Reports say many more are about to get their jobs axed from the photo video sharing company. Now, here's the thing. These layoffs may be happening in other countries, but if reports are to be believed, Indians working in the tech sector are also at risk. That's right. 2024 holds a bleak future, perhaps, for India's job seekers as well, especially in the tech sector. Reports say the biggest tech companies may soon pause hiring in India, and this includes the ones we just talked about: Google, Amazon and Meta. They are hitting the brakes on hiring due to the global economic slowdown. Their revenues are falling. Their projects have slowed down. Most of these companies have had to resort to restructuring measures. A cautious approach to hiring is one such measure. In fact, according to an analysis, active demand for major tech companies plummeted by 78% this year. This fall reduced the demand to a 1.5-year low, and as a result, this brought the total number of active listed openings globally to an abysmal low of just 30,000. I repeat, 30,000. That's the number of active openings across big tech players globally. And if I speak of India, these companies have as few as 200 open positions in India. This represents a 98% decrease from their typical hiring levels. What does that tell you? That it's not just global tech giants. Even companies in India are reducing their workforce, like Flipkart, Paytm. Human AI has laid off about 4% of its workforce. Paytm has laid off over 1,000 employees. This represents 10% of its total workforce. Flipkart also is considering laying off 5 to 7% of its workforce. The trend is clear. 2024 holds a bleak future for job seekers in the tech sector globally. Our advice would be navigate your decisions and choices in the days ahead rather wisely. Our next story is about the British Parliament, a symbol of the UK's so-called glorious past. Now, too bad, this Parliament has now turned into a rat house. I'm not making this up. According to a report, there have been a total of 1,000 sightings of rats and other vermin inside the Parliament building in the last 3 years. This is according to a dedicated expert who is based on the estate to tackle any nuisance, rodents that infest the Gothic Palace of Westminster. He revealed some interesting figures in an answer to a parliamentary question by a Liberal Democratic MP. According to the experts, the House of Commons Pest Control team was called 541 times in the year 2023. 541 times. This figure dwarfs the 412 incidents in 2022 and the 227 events in the year 2021. And that's not even all. Reports say these are not your run of the rats. They are apparently super mice that can evade traps and are immune to baits. They can be seen roaming inside the House of Commons and are far harder to kill than regular rodents. The British government has spent tens of thousands of pounds each year to combat Westminster's rodent problem, yet the four-legged pests continue to mount trouble. And according to the Rodent Control Strategy Review, there are around 600 bait boxes in Westminster's kitchens and catering areas. But the mice appear to be resistant to several of the poisons placed inside these boxes. Besides rats, the report talks about how the Parliament building is crumbling down. It says there have been 11,182 plumbing problems at the Parliament, and out of this, over 5,200 problems were reported last year itself. And in the same period, there have been over 2,000 mechanical incidents related to lifts across the estate. And you think that's bad? Well, then brace yourselves for what I'm about to tell you. Even traces of cocaine have been found inside the British Parliament. According to reports, they were discovered in multiple locations: a dining room in the House of Lords, an exclusive pub in Westminster Palace, a washroom located close to Boris Johnson's office, and another next to the office of the British Home Secretary Priti Patel. This was reported by the Sunday Times in 2021. It talked about an open drug culture inside the UK Parliament, a culture that the British government tries to hide. Well, you have rat infestation, plumbing problems, mechanical incidents, and cocaine discoveries. The great British Parliament seems to have turned into a great circus. What happens when a cow gets drunk? Apparently, they make good beef. And this is not a bad joke, but also Mark Zuckerberg's new hobby: getting cows drunk. Amusing, isn't it? Well, after building Facebook, acquiring WhatsApp and Instagram, and failing to make an impact with Threads, Mark Zuckerberg has found a new hobby: that's cattle rearing. Zuckerberg, in fact, is on a mission to produce the world's highest quality beef. The project is headquartered in Zuckerberg's private ranch in Kauai. The Meta boss is growing two breeds of cattle there: Japanese Wagyu and Scottish Angus. Both are already among the world's most expensive beef. But Zuckerberg wants to up the game, so he is feeding cows with food a lot of humans cannot afford: endless supply of homegrown macadamia nuts and beer to wash them down. Do tipsy cows really mean tasty beef? Well, Zuckerberg believes so. And we did a little research. As it turns out, sometimes, and only sometimes, are Wagyu cows given beer. It apparently stimulates their appetite. In Japan, some farmers also give their cows alcohol massages. Lucky for cows, they don't have a legal drinking age. Also, who said only a techie-turned-farmer could butcher cow jokes? The Meta chief shared glimpses of his high-stake project on Instagram. He mentioned how each cow will be given up to 10,000 pounds of food each year, which is why he needs to plant a lot of macadamia trees. Zuckerberg shared photos of his daughters helping plant those trees. He said, of all his projects, this is the most delicious. Well, too bad this passion project has made Zuckerberg a laughing stock. Many netizens are advising Zuckerberg to stick to tech and not venture to new pastures. With cow farming, PETA too has a beef with Zuckerberg. Let me now read out what PETA's vice president wrote on Twitter. Mark Zuckerberg says he has now started raising cattle at his property in Hawaii, feeding them beer and then killing. Mark, the dark age is called and they want you back. Hashtag go vegan. Zuckerberg is being accused of exploiting animals for profit. Many are calling for the boycott of Meta, in fact. Clearly, because of Zuckerberg's drunk cattle project, a lot of people are having a cow. Now imagine this. You are someone who wants to have children, but due to some reason you cannot. What would you do? Adopt a child? But as you may already know, that's not your only option. Today, there are various techniques, and one such method is surrogacy. For couples who cannot have children, it has proved to be a blessing. But Pope Francis has some different views on this. He believes that surrogacy is deplorable and has called for a universal ban on the practice. Here's what he said.
Cari ambasciatori, la via della pace.
Dear ambassadors, the path to peace calls for respect for life, for every human life, starting with the life of the unborn child in the mother's womb, which cannot be suppressed or turned into an object of trafficking. In this regard, I deem deplorable the practice of so-called surrogate motherhood, which represents a grave violation of the dignity of the woman and the child based on the exploitation of situations of the mother's material needs. A child is always a gift and never the basis of a commercial contract. Consequently, I express my hope for an effort by the international community to prohibit this practice universally.
È mai l'oggetto di un contratto.
Why is the Pope against surrogacy? Now, before that, let me explain what surrogacy actually is. It is an assisted reproductive technique, and in this arrangement, a woman agrees to give birth to a baby for another person. The parents basically donate the egg and the sperms, and a third woman carries the child. So, what is so deplorable about this practice? For all we know, it has helped millions of people have a child, especially the members of the LGBTQ community. You see, the Catholic Church has for long opposed surrogacy and in vitro fertilization, or IVF. It says that these assisted reproductive technologies depersonalize conception, and in the process, some embryos are also disposed of, which the Church argues is equal to abortion. Now, as far as surrogacy is concerned, the Pope has also compared it to trafficking. In the past, Pope Francis has referred to surrogacy as uterus for rent. In fact, the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has also used the term. Surrogacy is already illegal in Italy, but Meloni has also supported the criminalization of Italians who engage in surrogacy abroad. Several other European countries have also banned the practice. In the UK, for that matter, surrogacy is legal but restricted. Meanwhile, commercial surrogacy is outlawed altogether. Some also think surrogacy is exploitative. But is it really that bad if two adults consent to having a child in an unconventional way? What is so wrong about it? Isn't this, after all, a matter of choice? Once again, it comes down to what a woman wants to do with her body, and why should anyone other than that woman dictate that? Sometimes men and women have health conditions because of which they cannot have a child. Other times it's a man who does not have a partner but still wants to be a father. And then there are lesbians and gays who don't have many options. Surrogacy helps these people have a chance to start a family. Don't they have the right to be parents? Think about it. On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas tonight. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching. Leaving you with Gravitas images.
Stuck on it.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital